Hello, and welcome to the second tutorial for Chronicler. In the previous tutorial, we covered installing Chronicler, setting it up for playtesting, and setting Chronicler as the default program for opening .chronix projects. In this tutorial, I'm going to cover all the various features of the interface and show you how to replicate the Dragon example project with a few more features. So before we get too much further, the File menu has options for creating new projects, opening an existing project, importing a project, which is what you would do if you already had existing ChoiceScript code. Or since I have a project open, I can import just an individual scene into this project. Control S is the shortcut to save. You can save as. There's the settings, which I showed in the last tutorial, and the exit option. I'm going to go ahead and click on settings. Right here we can set up the editor font, so if you don't like, we can go with Algerian and hot pink. Why not? Apply that. As you can see, it changes all the text in the editor. If I go back to this, it changes also the text in the bubbles. It does not change the text in the generated ChoiceScript code. This is only for the editor. Down here you can set the maximum number of autosaves, the interval for autosaves, the maximum number of undos, and the max number of recent files that show up on the home screen. Close out of that, and I'm going to go ahead and start a new project. So I'm going to do File, New Project, and there we go. We're going to give it a name, Dragon, and the author is Choice of Games. You'll notice that as you type the title in, it also changes the window. So if I scroll down a little bit, right here is the start bubble. This is where your scene will start from. So the first bubble you connect up to it is going to be the first bubble that shows up. So I'm going to go ahead and place a story bubble right here, and I'm going to connect the start bubble to this story bubble. This one is going to be intro. Now note this is the label, so in the generated ChoiceScript code, that will be the label that shows up if this particular bubble has more than one connection leading into it. Over here this might be confusing, but I can lock the order of this bubble, so if I want it to show up in a specific order in my ChoiceScript code, you can do that. Just note that this is kind of a suggestion to the compiler, so it's not guaranteed that the bubble will show up exactly in that order. So I'm going to go ahead and open my handy dandy notepad, and I'm going to copy paste the startup text into this bubble because I'm lazy. I want let us begin to be in bold, so I'm going to highlight it and toggle the bold tags around the selection. Say you don't like that, you can highlight it again and turn them off. But I'm going to go ahead and leave them on. Next, we add a choice. So I'm going to click on the choice bubble tool and place a choice bubble down. And I'm going to add a new choice. If we look here, the first choice was, I take to the air with a quick beat of my wings. Let's go ahead and add that. I can double click on an existing choice to modify its text. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is connect up the intro bubble with that choice bubble we just created. So I'm going to head over to the link tool, and I'm going to click and drag from the bottom of the intro. Now I don't have to. I could click and drag from the right, and the connection will be anchored to the right. If I click from the left, it'll be over there. If I hold down Shift and I let go, it'll leave the connection tool selected. and connect it with that. Okay, so we add some more story to show our player after each of these choices was selected. So I'm going to create 4 new bubbles. Holding down the shift key again will allow me to place multiples. Just rearrange them a bit. And I'm going to go ahead and connect them up. So switching back to the link tool and holding shift, I can either anchor it to the left or the right side of this choice. This one goes over here. So now this one, oop, don't like that. If you make a mistake, you can always right click to delete a connection, or clicking and dragging again will replace the existing connection. Okay, releasing shift brings me back to the selection tool. And I'm going to go ahead and fill in the text for each of these. Okay, so I went ahead and copy pasted all the text into these new bubbles. So one thing that you should notice is that there is word wrapping up here in the text box, but there is none in the bubble itself. So if I hover over the bottom right corner of a bubble, I can left click and drag to expand it out, and you'll see exactly what your text looks like. Okay, so after we showed the user this text, we wanted to set some variables. So before we go ahead and do that, I'm going to switch over to the variables tab, and let's create some new variables. So you have the option of setting it to a global variable or specifically to a single scene. The variables that we're going to create here, such as the player's name, is something that you want to persist across your entire game. So I'm going to leave it as global. See, we also need brutality, finesse, and disdain. I'm going to give each of these a default value of 50. Oh, almost forgot, we need one more variable, cunning. I'm going to also set its default value to 50. So back over here, I'm going to choose the action bubble tool, and holding shift, I'm going to place 4 of them. So selecting the first action, I'm going to add an action to it, and you'll note that it has code completion. So if I type a star, it'll show me all the choice script actions that are available. If I start to type word in, there we go, SE set. Hitting tab or enter will accept it. So the autocomplete knows that the set command requires a variable as the second argument. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the disdain variable. Hit enter. Next, it knows that you can either type another variable or one of these operators. So I'm going to increase disdain by 10%. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same for the next action bubbles. Okay, so now that I've filled out those, we're going to go ahead and connect them up. So again, the link tool, holding shift, I can drag out multiple connections. Each of those connects back to the main root of the story. So I'm going to choose the story bubble and place it there. I'm going to connect each of those up. I'm also going to give this bubble a label. Since it has multiple connections to it, the compiler will generate the label. If you don't specify one, it will use a default one, and it doesn't exactly look pretty. So we're going to call it victory. Now this is exactly what we have in the example project. I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more. The player is now given the choice yes or no. Do you finish him off? Now I want when the player chooses yes, if their brutality has increased, then we will allow them to succeed. Otherwise, that it will fail. So let's create a condition bubble. Place it there, and my condition is that brutality is greater than 50, which was our default value. So if they chose this option right here and it increased their brutality, then this check will succeed. So if it succeeded, the knight is dead. Or the knight escapes. Okay, so now this is what is potentially confusing with condition bubbles. Anchoring the output to the left side is true. Anchoring to the right side is false. So if the brutality is indeed greater than 50, it will follow the route to the left. If it isn't, so if it's 50 or below, it will follow the route to the right. I plan on, of course, making that a little more visual in the future, probably with different colors for each side. But that feature is not implemented yet. Let's go ahead and connect those up. So yes, if you want to destroy them, let's perform that check. And if not, the knight escapes. So let's go ahead and give that one a label. You'll note that it doesn't allow me to type spaces, since spaces aren't allowed in JavaScript labels. Okay, so there's one other thing I want to do here. Choosing the knight escapes, I want to say your brutality is, and if I start to type brutality again, it provides the autocomplete for displaying the contents of a variable in JavaScript. So if I hit enter on that, it will show me the value that is brutality. So for example, its default is 50, and if it was still 50, it will show your brutality is 50. We could do some more with that. So what if I wanted to do something more advanced, and I don't want to drag out all these connections, so I just want to type the code. So I'm going to go ahead and select the code bubble and create it. And it's very much like a story bubble, except it has more code completion options. So I'm going to say if brutality is less than so if brutality is less than or equal to 50, I'm going to say your brutality is average. Else if Your brutality is greater than 50. Your brutality is excellent. Else your brutality is dismal. So now it's going to execute that code statement. So let me delete that and connect it up. So now let's go in and test our game. The player name does not have a value specified. So if we go to that, and we're just going to set its default to be an empty string, and I'm going to hit play again to refresh it, and it works. Okay, so I'm just going to choose the first option there. And do we finish him off? Yes. The knight escaped. I made a mistake in my choice script code. So if we go back and we select our code bubble, it said that it required a finish statement. So I'm going to do finish. Same with this one. And hopefully that fixes it. Let's click play. Yes. And the knight escapes because our brutality was average, which meant that it was exactly 50. Okay, so my computer froze and crashed probably due to the recording software, and I lost all my progress on the example project. Luckily, hitting the play button generated the choice script code, and I was able to file import that choice script code, and I rewrote and I converted all the generated condition bubbles back into this code bubble. So that's definitely one reason why you need to always do file, choose where you want to save your project. So we're going to call this one Dragon Chronicler Works. You note that where I saved it, which was in Downloads, Chronicler Projects, it creates two folders, Backups and Scenes. Scenes is where your generated choice script goes, and Backups will be where your autosave show up, and one should be showing up in about a minute. So I think I fixed all the bugs with our code, so I'm going to go ahead and run the game now. And this time, let's go ahead and rush at the knight. And yes, of course I want to finish him off. And hey, look, it succeeded. So if we play again, I'm going to choose the same option. And this time, let's spare him. He escapes, and my brutality is excellent. Similarly, if I chose that one, and I choose to finish him off, he escapes because our brutality is dismal. Okay, so just a couple more things. Holding shift with the select tool down lets you click and drag to highlight multiple bubbles, which you can then move around, or you can delete. Control Z will undo that delete. Control S saves your project, of course, and you'll see that it shows up down here. Another thing you'll have noticed from the example project was colors. So if we go over to the palette tool, you'll see that it has some default color palettes for each bubble type. So say I don't like the default color type for choice bubbles. I'm going to hover over that menu option, and I'm going to right click on it. it brings me up to the palette creator editor. So if I change its color, let's make it a darker purple, and I save that change, it'll change all choice bubbles. I can right click directly on the tool to create a new palette. Let's call this one Brutality. And its color is going to be a dark red. So let's apply that to the options that affect brutality. You'll note that it also changes the color of the links. So let's also go ahead and create a new palette for cunning. And we'll make it a green color. We'll add one for disdain. And disdain is kind of a royal thing, so we'll make that a purplish color. A royal purple. We'll apply that. If we go back over to this, you'll see them in the menu here. So let's choose brutality again, and we'll set it on these ones. Now, just like bubbles that have the default color palettes, if I go over here and I was to right click on disdain because I don't like how bright it is and make it a little darker and save that, it updates all bubbles that have the disdain palette applied to them. Hitting escape will bring me back to the selection tool. And that just about covers all the basics of working with Chronicler. Thanks for watching, and happy chronicling!